Hi there, Striker. This is our third part of UFO mystery. Another astronomer was Lincoln Laparz, who had headed the Air Force's investigation into the green fireballs and other UFO phenomena in New Mexico. Laparz reported two personal sightings, one of a green fireball, the other of an anomalous disk-like object. Both Tom Bohr and Laparz were part of Hanek's 1952 survey. Hanek himself took two photos through the window of a commercial airliner of a disk-like object that seemed to pace his aircraft. Retired professor of astronomy Andrew Fracknoy criticized the hypothesis that UFOs are extraterrestrial spacecraft, and responded to the onslaught of credulous coverage in books, films and entertainment by teaching his students to apply critical thinking to such claims, advising them that being a good scientist is not, unlike being a good detective. According to Fracknoy, UFO reports might at first seem mysterious, but the more you investigate, the more likely you are to find that there is less to these stories than meets the eye. In 1980, a survey of 1,800 members of various amateur astronomer associations by Gert Helb and Hanek for QFOS found that 24% responded yes to the question, have you ever observed an object which resisted your most exhaustive efforts at identification? List of UFO's famous hoaxes. The Mori Island incident. George Adamski, over the space of 2 decades, made various claims about his meetings with telepathic aliens from nearby planets. He claimed photographs of the far side of the moon taken by the Soviet lunar probe Luna 3 in 1959 were fake, and that there were cities, trees and snow-capped mountains on the far side of the moon. Among copycats was a shadowy British figure named Cedric Allingham. Ed Walters, a building contractor, in 1987 allegedly perpetrated a hoax in Gulf Breeze, Florida. Walters claimed at first having seen a small UFO flying near his home and took some photographs of the craft. Walters reported and documented a series of UFO sightings over a period of 3 weeks and took several photographs. These sightings became famous, and are collectively referred to as the Gulf Breeze UFO incident. 3 years later, in 1990, after the Walters family had moved, the new residents discovered a model of a UFO poorly hidden in the attic that bore an undeniable resemblance to the craft in Walters' photographs. Most investigators, like the forensic photo expert William G. Heiser, now consider the sightings to be a hoax. The term UFO, or UFOP, was coined in 1953 by the United States Air Force, USAF, to serve as a catch-all for all such reports. In its initial definition, the USAF stated that a UFOB was any airborne object which by performance, aerodynamic characteristics, or unusual features, does not conform to any presently known aircraft or missile type, on which cannot be positively identified as a familiar object. Accordingly, the term was initially restricted to that fraction of cases which remained unidentified after investigation, as the USAF was interested in potential national security reasons and technical aspects. See Air Force Regulation 202. During the late 1940s and through the 1950s, UFOs were often referred to popularly as flying saucers or flying discs. The term UFO became more widespread during the 1950s, at first in technical literature, but later in popular use. UFOs garnered considerable interest during the Cold War, an era associated with the heightened concerns about national security, and, more recently, in the 2010s, for unexplained reasons. Nevertheless, various studies have concluded that the phenomenon does not represent a threat, and nor does it contain anything worthy of scientific pursuit. For example, 1951 Flying Saucer Working Party, 1953 CIA Robertson Panel, USAF Project Blue Book, Condon Committee. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a UFO as an unidentified flying object, a flying saucer. The first published book to use the word was authored by Donald D. Kehoe. As an acronym, UFO was coined by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, who headed Project Blue Book, then the USAF's official investigation of UFOs. He wrote, "Obviously the term flying saucer is misleading when applied to objects of every conceivable shape and performance. For this reason the military prefers the more general, if less colorful, name, unidentified flying objects. UFO, pronounced UFO, for short. Other phrases that were used officially and that predate the UFO acronym include flying flapjack, flying disc, unexplained flying discs, and unidentifiable object." The phrase flying saucer gained widespread attention after the Northern Hemisphere summer of 1947. On June 24, a civilian pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 objects flying in formation near Mount Rainier in the United States. Arnold timed the sighting and estimated the speed of discs to be over 1,200 miles per hour, 1,931 kilometers per hour. At the time, he claimed he described the objects flying in a saucer-like fashion, leading to newspaper accounts of flying saucers and flying discs. UFOs were commonly referred to colloquially as a bogey by Western military personnel and pilots during the Cold War. The term bogey was originally used to report anomalies in radar blips, to indicate possible hostile forces that might be roaming in the area. In popular usage, the term UFO came to be used to refer to claims of alien spacecraft, and because of the public and media ridicule associated with the topic, some ufologists and investigators prefer to use terms such as unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, or anomalous phenomena, as in the title of the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena, NARCAP. Anomalous aerial vehicle, AF, or unidentified aerial system, UAS, are also sometimes used in a military aviation context to describe unidentified targets, while technically a UFO refers to any unidentified flying object. In modern popular culture, the term UFO has generally become synonymous with alien spacecraft. However, the term ETV, extraterrestrial vehicle, is sometimes used to separate this explanation of UFOs from totally earthbound explanations. Critics argue that all UFO evidence is anecdotal and can be explained as prosaic natural phenomena. Defenders of UFO research counter that knowledge of observational data, other than what is reported in their popular media, is limited in the scientific community and further study is needed. Studies have established that the majority of UFO observations are misidentified conventional objects or natural phenomena, most commonly aircraft, balloons including sky lanterns, satellites, and astronomical objects such as meteors, bright stars and planets. A small percentage are hoaxes. Note 1. Fewer than 10% of reported sightings remain unexplained after proper investigation and therefore can be classified as unidentified in the strictest sense. According to Stephen Novler, proponents of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, ETH, suggest these unexplained reports are of alien spacecraft. However, the null hypothesis cannot be excluded, that these reports are simply other more prosaic phenomena that cannot be identified due to lack of complete information or due to the necessary subjectivity of the reports. Novler says that instead of accepting the null hypothesis, UFO enthusiasts tend to engage in special pleading by offering outlandish, untested explanations for the validity of the ETH, which violate Occam's razor. Ufology is not generally considered credible in mainstream science. There was, in the past, some debate in their scientific community about whether any scientific investigation into UFO sightings is warranted, with the general conclusion that the phenomenon was not worthy of serious investigation except as a cultural artifact. The study of UFOs has received little support in mainstream scientific literature. Official studies ended in the U.S. in December 1969, following the statement by the government scientist Edward Condon that further study of UFOs could not be justified on grounds of scientific advancement. The Condon report and its conclusions were endorsed by the National Academy of Scientists, of which Condon was a member. On the other hand, a scientific review by the UFO Subcommittee of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, EAA, disagreed with Condon's conclusion. noting that at least 30% of the cases studied remained unexplained and that scientific benefit might be gained by continued study. Like Hayek, Jacques Vallée, a scientist and prominent UFO researcher, has pointed to what he believes is the scientific deficiency of most UFO research, including government studies. He complains of the mythology and cultism often associated with their phenomenon but alleges that several hundred professional scientists, a group both he and Hayek have termed the Invisible College, continue to study UFOs in private. UFOs have become a prevalent theme in modern culture and the social phenomena have been the subject of academic research in sociology and psychology. Rock panel categorization. Besides anecdotal visual sightings, reports sometimes include claims of other kinds of evidence, including cases studied by the military and various government agencies of different countries, such as Project Blue Book, the Condon Committee, the French Japan, SEPRA, and Uruguay's current Air Force study. A comprehensive scientific review of cases where physical evidence was available was carried out by the 1998 Starrock panel, with specific examples of many of the categories listed below. Radar contact and tracking, sometimes from multiple sites. These have included military personnel and control tower operators, simultaneous visual sightings, and aircraft intercepts. One such example was the mass sightings of large, silent, low-flying black triangles in 1989 and 1990 over Belgium, tracked by NATO radar and jet interceptors, and, investigated by Belgium's military, included photographic evidence. Another famous case from 1986 was the Japan Airlines Flight 1628 incident over Alaska, investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. Photographic evidence, including still photos, movie film, and video. Claims of physical trace of landing UFOs, including ground impressions, burned or desiccated soil, burned and broken foliage, magnetic anomalies, increased radiation levels, and metallic traces. You have our third part of UFO Mystery. See you on the fourth part.